In a picturesque town surrounded by rolling hills, three inseparable friends, Clara, Juliet, and Rose, shared their lives in laughter and companionship. Among them, Clara was the most breathtaking, with golden curls, sapphire blue eyes, and a graceful figure. But for all her beauty, she was also the clumsiest, tripping over her own feet, knocking over drinks, and always finding herself in the most embarrassing situations. Yet, despite her clumsiness, Clara was the kindest of souls. She was the first to help a stranger, the first to offer a warm smile, and the first to laugh at herself. One day, the town was buzzing with excitement. Lord Adrian Sinclair, the wealthiest and most eligible bachelor in the region, was hosting a grand ball to choose a bride. It was an invitation that no young lady in town would dare refuse. The evening arrived, and Juliet and Rose looked breathtaking in their gowns. Clara, however, had no interest in attending. But just as Juliet was about to leave, she gasped, "My necklace. I forgot it at home." "Clara, please," Rose begged. "Run and fetch it. We can't be late." Sighing, Clara retrieved the necklace and hurried to the grand Sinclair estate. She stopped at the garden entrance, unwilling to step inside, feeling out of place among such elegance. As she waited, she wandered through the moonlit garden, inhaling the scent of roses. That was when she heard footsteps. A tall, handsome man approached, his clothes dusty as if he had just returned from a ride. "You shouldn't be out here alone," he said. Clara tilted her head. "I could say the same for you." He chuckled. "Are you not here for the balls?" She shook her head. "No, I was just delivering something for a friend." The man studied her. "And why wouldn't you want to attend?" "Every woman dreams of marrying Lord Sinclair." Clara snorted. "Not me. That man is senseless." The man raised a brow. "Oh." She crossed her arms. "If I were him, I wouldn't throw a ball just to pick a wife. Love isn't a performance. It's real, and it's found in everyday moments, not in a grand hall filled with people pretending to be perfect." The man's lips curled into an amused smile. "That's an interesting thought." Before he could respond, Juliet rushed outside, snatching the necklace from Clara's hands. "Oh, thank you. Now, go home before someone thinks you're a guest." She barely noticed the man standing nearby before dashing back inside. Clara turned back, but the man had disappeared. She had no idea she had just spoken to Lord Adrian Sinclair himself. Adrian couldn't forget the girl in the garden. Unlike the women in the ballroom, she had no interest in impressing him. She spoke honestly, without flattery or pretense. Determined to find her again, he devised a plan. He instructed his personal assistant, Mr. Lyle, to pretend to be Lord Sinclair at all social events while Adrian, dressed in modest clothes, roamed the town in search of the clumsy girl with a kind heart. Days passed, and Adrian, disguised as a common man, visited the town frequently. He found Clara at the bakery, her face dusted with flour as she laughed at a spilled tray of pastries. "You again," she teased when she spotted him. "I was passing by," he said. "You work here?" "I do," she said proudly. "And I make the best bread in town. Though I may drop a few loaves now and then." Adrian smiled, finding her even more charming than before. Each day he visited, sometimes buying bread, sometimes just talking to her. He watched her help an old woman at the market, comfort a crying child, and even trip over a loose stone, only to laugh at herself. One afternoon, as they sat on a bench outside the bakery, he asked, "Would you ever marry a poor man?" Clara blinked. "If I love him, why not?" Adrian's heart pounded. "Even if he had nothing?" She smiled. "Love isn't measured in wealth." That was all he needed to hear. A few days later, Clara received an invitation. Lord Sinclair wished to meet her. Confused, she went to the grand estate. When she arrived, her eyes widened in shock. Standing before her was not a stranger, but the dusty traveler she had spoken to in the garden and at the bakery. Only now, he was dressed in the finest suit. Her mouth fell open. You're... Adrian grinned. "Yes. And you were right. I was senseless to think love could be found at a ball." I found it in a clumsy girl who trips over her own feet, but carries the most beautiful heart. Clara's face turned red. I spilled sugar on you once too, if that helps. He laughed, then knelt before her. Clara, will you marry me? She looked at him, her heart racing, and realized she had fallen in love without even knowing it. Yes, she whispered. The day of the wedding arrived, and the entire town gathered at the grand Sinclair estate to witness the most unlikely bride walk down the aisle. Juliet and Rose stood beside Clara, adjusting her veil. Who would have thought? Rose mused. I knew she'd marry him, Juliet said, nudging Clara playfully, even if she was too stubborn to see it. Clara, dressed in a flowing white gown, fidgeted nervously. I hope I don't trip walking down the aisle. You probably will, Rose teased, but he'll love you anyway. The ceremony was held in the Grand Estate's rose garden, where the scent of fresh blooms filled the air. Adrian stood at the altar, watching as Clara approached. His heart swelled with love. When she finally reached him, her cheeks flushed, he whispered, You didn't trip. Clara exhaled a breath of relief.
Yet.
The officiant spoke the vows, and when the moment came for Adrian to place the ring on Clara's finger, she giggled as it nearly slipped from his grasp. Adrian smirked. You're rubbing off on me? The guests chuckled, and when it was time to seal their vows, Adrian leaned in and kissed his bride, the woman who had changed his life in the simplest yet most profound way. As the celebration began, Clara, true to herself, accidentally stepped on Adrian's foot during their first dance. He only laughed and held her closer. You may be the clumsiest woman I've ever met, he said softly, but you are also the love of my life. And so, the girl who once thought she had no place in a grand ballroom became the wife of the wealthiest man in town, not because of her beauty, but because of her heart. And every day after, as she tripped over rugs, knocked over goblets, and stumbled her way through life, Adrian was always there, to catch her, to love her, and to remind her that she was perfect just the way she was.